Chapter 1. First Contact. The thin Martian atmosphere whistled past the windows of the United Earth outpost as Dr. Jonathan "Doc" Harlow stepped onto the red soil. The outpost, a cluster of geodesic domes connected by pressurized tunnels, stood stark against the barren landscape. "Welcome to Mars, Dr. Harlow," greeted Colonel Jack Rivers, the military head of the outpost, extending a firm hand as he eyed the new arrival with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "Thank you, Colonel," Doc replied, adjusting his glasses. "I must say, the real thing is much more impressive than the simulations back home." Jack chuckled as he led Doc towards the main dome. "Wait until you meet our guests. The Virians are unlike any species you've studied before." As they walked, they passed through security checks. Doc noted the efficiency, but his mind was on the aliens. How have the Virians been? Cooperative. Somewhat, Jack admitted. They're cautious, naturally. They respect strength and clarity, military ranks, direct orders. Your unofficial rank might be a bit confusing for them. Doc nodded thoughtfully. "I'm here to learn from them as much as they might learn from us." Entering the main dome, they were greeted by a buzz of activity. Scientists and military personnel moved briskly, attending to their duties. At the center of the dome stood a transparent enclosure where a group of Virians communicated through a digital interface. Their skin shimmered with a metallic hue, reflecting the artificial light. "Dr. Harlow, meet Lieutenant Carl Anders." Jack introduced another key member of their team, a young officer with a sharp gaze. "He's our liaison with the Virians." Carl shook Doc's hand warmly. "A pleasure, Doctor. I've read your papers on xenocommunication. We could use your insights." "Happy to contribute," Doc responded, his attention drawn to the enclosure. "Shall we?" The three men approached the Virians. Carl began the introductions. "This is Dr. Jonathan Harlow, a leading xenobiologist from Earth." One of the Virians, larger than the others, tilted its head slightly, its eyes narrowing as it sized Doc up. "You carry no rank," it observed in a resonant voice that vibrated through the translator. Doc smiled, stepping closer. "That's correct. I believe in leadership through knowledge and understanding rather than hierarchy." The Virian leader hummed lowly, a sound of consideration. "Interesting concept, Doctor." Doc used the moment to delve deeper. "And what concepts govern your leadership?" "I'm here to understand, to bridge our worlds through dialogue." The leader's response was slow, calculated. "Strength, structure, order. Our society values the clarity of command." Jack watched the exchange closely, noting the intrigued expressions of his team. Turning to Carl, he whispered, "Looks like Doc's already making an impression." Carl nodded, his eyes not leaving Doc and the Virians. "Let's hope it's the right one." As the conversation continued, Doc carefully wove through topics of science, diplomacy, and mutual benefits. The Virians, initially reserved, began to engage more openly, intrigued by this human who commanded respect without rank. After the meeting, as the trio walked back to the command center, Jack clapped Doc on the back. "Not bad for your first day, Document. You might just change how we handle interspecies relations." Doc chuckled, adjusting his glasses once more. "Or at the very least, make them think twice about underestimating a Doc." With that, the seeds of mutual respect were sown, not through the flaunting of power, but through the promise of understanding and cooperation. Doc's journey had just begun, and the path ahead promised to be as intriguing as it was unpredictable. Chapter 2. Unexpected Boundaries. The following morning, Dr. Jonathan "Doc" Harlow found himself in the outpost's lab, surrounded by various specimens and digital screens displaying complex alien biochemistry. As he examined a Virian cellular sample under the microscope, Major Tom Erickson, the outpost security chief, entered the lab briskly. "Morning, Doc," Tom greeted, his voice echoing slightly in the spacious room. "Heard you made quite the impression yesterday." Doc smiled, not looking up from his microscope. "I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, Major. What brings you here so early?" Tom approached, hands clasped behind his back. "Just checking in on our guests' comfort, and security, of course. How are you finding the virion samples?" "Intriguing," Doc replied, adjusting the focus on his microscope. "Their cellular structure is unlike anything we've encountered. There's a lot we can learn about adaptability and survival from these creatures." As they spoke, Carl Anders walked in, a tablet in his hand. "Gentlemen, we might have a small situation. The virions are requesting a meeting with Doc again. They're quite insistent." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Already pulling you back in, huh? They must really value your perspective." Doc removed his glasses, cleaning them thoughtfully. "Or they're testing my boundaries. Either way, it's an opportunity to deepen our dialogue." The three men made their way to the meeting room where the virions awaited. The alien leader, whom they started referring to as Virex based on its designation, greeted them with a nod. "Dr. Harlow, we have considered your words," Virex began, its tone more cordial than the previous day. "Your approach is unusual, intriguing. We wish to understand more about your role here." Doc took the lead, his voice calm and assured. "I'm here to facilitate understanding between our peoples. I believe that through knowledge and cooperation, we can achieve much more than through mere commands and hierarchy." Virex tilted its head, considering. "Your society values knowledge over hierarchy?" "In many cases, yes," Doc explained. "Experts in fields like mine often lead projects not because they command, but because they know." The dialogue continued, with Tom and Carl occasionally chiming in to provide security and operational perspectives, ensuring the virions understood that Doc's unique role was supported and respected by the military hierarchy. After the meeting, the trio returned to the command center, a plan forming in their minds. "Doc, your way of handling the virions could set a new precedent for how we engage with alien species," Carl noted, looking over the notes he had taken. Tom nodded in agreement. "But we'll need to tread carefully. If they see it as a weakness rather than a strength, it could backfire." Doc considered their words, his mind racing with possibilities. "We'll need to be strategic. Perhaps we can show them that in our world, power can come from many places, not just the end of a command chain." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Doc spent his mornings in the lab, afternoons in meetings with the virions, and evenings discussing strategies with Tom and Carl. Their teamwork began to blur the lines between military and civilian roles, creating a new dynamic at the outpost. As the Martian sun set one evening, casting a crimson glow over the landscape, Doc stood by a window in the communal area, watching the dust swirl. Tom joined him, a cup of coffee in each hand. "Looks like you're changing more than just virion perspectives, Doc," Tom said, handing him a cup. Doc accepted the coffee, his gaze still on the horizon. "We're all learning, Tom. This planet, this mission, it's bigger than any one of us. But together, perhaps we can change the way we all see the universe." With the red dust settling and the stars beginning to twinkle above, the outpost seemed not just a collection of domes on a distant planet, but a crucible for new ideas and new ways of thinking, brought together by the unlikely leadership of a man called Doc. Chapter 3. A Silent Command. Dr. Jonathan, Doc, Harlow awoke to a message blinking on his personal terminal. It was an urgent summons from the virions. As he dressed hastily, there was a knock at his door. Major Tom Erickson stood outside, his expression serious. "Morning. Document. Just got word about your meeting." "Mind if I tag along?" Tom asked, his stance indicating it wasn't just a casual request. "Of course, Major. I'd appreciate the company," Doc replied, sensing the tension in Tom's voice. They made their way to the central meeting hall, where Lieutenant Carl Anders was already waiting, talking in hushed tones with a couple of outpost security personnel. "Everything all right, Carl?" Doc inquired as they approached. Carl nodded, but his eyes were wary. "Just standard precautions, document. But there's something off about this meeting. The Virians requested your presence alone initially. Had to push to get us included." The trio entered the meeting hall, greeted by the Virians' shimmering forms. The atmosphere was charged, a stark contrast to their usual reserved demeanor. Virex, the Virian leader, stepped forward. "Dr. Harlow, we have observed your interactions. You influence without direct command. This is unusual for us," Virex stated, its voice resonating strangely. Doc adjusted his glasses, preparing to tread carefully. "In our culture, influence can stem from trust and respect as much as from authority. It's about mutual understanding." Virex seemed to process his words, then gestured to a device on the table. "We have something that might interest you. A relic from our world. It has unique properties." As Doc approached the device, a subtle hum filled the room. The air seemed to thicken. He felt a slight vibration under his skin, an odd sensation that made him pause. "What is this device?" Doc asked, curiosity piqued despite the strange feeling. "It enhances certain traits, leadership, charisma among them," Virex explained. "We use it to stabilize our command structures." Tom exchanged a glance with Carl, both men alert to the implications. "And you're showing this to Doc because—" "We wish to understand how such a device would affect a human, especially one like Dr. Harlow, who leads without leading," Virex continued. With a cautious nod from Tom, Doc placed his hand on the device. The humming increased, and a wave of warmth rushed through him. The room spun slightly, and he steadied himself against the table. "Interesting effect," Doc noted, trying to hide his discomfort. "It's very potent." The Virians observed intently, their gaze unblinking. After a moment, Virex spoke again. "We see potential in this interaction. Perhaps you could use this to unify your approach with us." As the meeting concluded, the humans returned to their quarters to discuss the day's events. "That device could be a game-changer, but also a risk," Carl pointed out as they sat around a small table in the communal area. Tom sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "It amplifies leadership qualities, which is useful. But if it's affecting you physically, we need to be cautious. We can't have you or anyone becoming dependent on alien technology." Doc nodded in agreement. "Let's keep it under observation. We'll do some tests, see how it interacts with human physiology in controlled conditions." Over the next few days, Doc, with the help of Tom and Carl, conducted a series of experiments. They monitored his vital signs, his decision-making processes, and even his interactions with both humans and Virians. The device did enhance his natural abilities, but it was clear that it needed to be used sparingly. One evening, as the red Martian sunset cast long shadows over the outpost, Doc stood watching the horizon. Tom joined him, leaning against the railing. "You know, Doc, in all my years in the service, I've never seen anything quite like this." "You're handling it well," Tom said, clapping Doc on the shoulder. Doc smiled, looking out at the fading light. "We're in uncharted territory, Tom, but I think together we can navigate it. Just have to keep our heads clear and our intentions pure." As they turned back to the outpost, The lights inside began to glow brighter against the encroaching darkness. The outpost wasn't just a collection of modules on a distant planet anymore. It was a beacon of collaboration and understanding, guided by the silent command of trust and respect. ChatGPT. ChatGPT. Chapter 4. The Bonds of Trust. Dr. Jonathan "Doc" Harlow stood in the central lab of the United Earth Outpost, surrounded by screens displaying data from the alien device tests. Major Tom Erickson and Lieutenant Carl Landis joined him, each bringing their own expertise to the ongoing investigation. "Looks like the effects are temporary, but potent while they last," Doc noted, reviewing the latest batch of test results. "The challenge now is understanding the long-term implications." Carl leaned over one of the digital displays. "And making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. If this technology can influence leadership traits, it could be misused." Tom crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "We need to establish strict protocols for its use. Maybe limit access to a few of us until we know more." As they discussed, a commotion at the entrance of the lab caught their attention. A group of scientists, led by Dr. Henry Lau, a senior biologist, approached with urgency. "Doc, we've noticed some unusual patterns in the Virion data since you started using the device," Henry said, handing over a tablet showing complex genetic sequences. Doc studied the data closely. "This is intriguing, Henry. It seems like the device might be affecting more than just human physiology. We could be looking at a feedback loop." Henry nodded. "Exactly. It's as if the device is learning from you as much as you're learning from it. We need to consider the possibility of a bidirectional influence." Carl interjected, "That adds a layer of complexity. Could it be adapting or evolving in response to human interaction?" The men gathered around the data screens, each contributing thoughts and hypotheses. The discussion was intense but productive, as they pieced together the puzzle. "We need to present this to the Virions," Tom suggested. "They should be aware of these developments. Plus, it might help in building a more transparent relationship." Doc agreed, and a meeting was arranged. Together with Tom and Carl, Doc faced the Virion delegation once more. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Virex, we've observed some interesting changes related to the device," Doc began, presenting the data they had compiled. "It appears to interact with human biology in unexpected ways, possibly even adapting over time." Virex, the Virion leader, processed the information with visible interest. "This is unforeseen. We have used these devices for cycles, but never have we observed such phenomena." The discussion that followed was detailed and technical. Doc and his team explained their findings, emphasizing the collaborative nature of their research and their commitment to transparency. "As partners in this venture, we believe it's crucial that we explore these effects together," Doc concluded, his tone earnest. Virex nodded slowly. "Your approach is unusual, but your commitment to openness is valued. We will consult our own experts and share our insights." Back at the outpost, the team felt a cautious optimism. They had navigated a potential minefield and come out with a stronger partnership. "Today was a good day," Carl remarked as they debriefed in the lab. "Not just for our research, but for our relations with the Virions." Tom agreed. "It's all about trust, isn't it? Building it, maintaining it, especially out here." Doc looked around at his colleagues, a sense of pride filling him. "It's about more than just solving puzzles. It's about how we work together to do it, humans and Virions alike." As the Martian night descended and the stars began to glitter sharply against the black sky, the men of the outpost continued their work. They were far from home, but at that moment they were united by a common purpose. The outpost was not just a place of research, but a place where new forms of understanding and cooperation were being forged, thanks to the silent command of trust and mutual respect. Chapter 5. Intimate Understanding. The Martian evening was cooler than usual as Dr. Jonathan, Doc Harlow, and Major Tom Erickson stepped out of the research facility, taking a moment to appreciate the vast, starlit sky. They were joined by Lieutenant Carl Anders, who seemed preoccupied with recent findings. Doc, the data from the last session with the Virians brought up some interesting ethical questions. Carl started, breaking the silence as they walked towards the communal area of the outpost. Like what? Doc asked, genuinely curious. Carl hesitated, choosing his words carefully. It's about how much influence we should really have. This device, the way it intertwines with our own physiology, it's powerful. Maybe too powerful. Tom chimed in, his voice steady. It's a tool, like any other. How we use it, that's the real question. It's why your perspective, Doc, is crucial here. You're the balance we need. The three men sat down at a table outside, under the dim light of the outpost's exterior lamps. The conversation shifted from professional concerns to more personal reflections. You know, back on Earth, my wife always said I was too obsessed with work. Said I needed to find balance, Tom revealed, looking out into the darkness. Carl laughed softly. Guess she'd be happy to see you now, huh? Mars hasn't exactly lessened your workload. It's different, though, Tom responded thoughtfully. Here, it feels like everything we do has a direct impact. It's immediate, tangible, makes the long hours worth it. Doc nodded in agreement. It's the same for me. I've never felt more connected to my work than here, dealing with the unknown, navigating these new relationships. The conversation deepened, each sharing their hopes and concerns, not just about the mission but about what awaited them back home. It was a rare moment of vulnerability among the outpost's leadership. As they talked, a soft alarm chimed from Doc's communicator, a reminder of his late-night check-in with the Virian delegation. Time for another round with our extraterrestrial colleagues, Doc said, standing up with a stretch. Do you ever worry, Carl asked as they began walking back, about how much we're changing? Being out here, working with alien tech. It's a constant concern, Doc admitted. But change isn't inherently bad. It's growth, evolution. As long as we hold onto our core values, we can make sure it's growth in the right direction. Reaching the lab, they were greeted by Dr. Henry Lau, who had stayed late to prepare for the meeting. Evening, Henry. Everything set for tonight? Doc asked, slipping on his lab coat. Henry nodded, adjusting some equipment. All ready. Though, I've been thinking about what you said earlier about growth and change. How do you balance that with the mission's goals? Doc considered the question as he checked the systems. By remembering why we're here, to learn, to build understanding. Every test, every interaction with the Virians, it's a step towards that. We keep that in mind, and we stay on track. As the meeting commenced, the conversation with the Virians was notably more collaborative. The recent discussions about the ethical use of technology had clearly impacted Doc, who now approached the dialogue with even greater care and empathy. The session lasted well into the night, with both humans and Virians exploring new ways to use the alien device responsibly. By the time they concluded, there was a mutual sense of achievement, a feeling that they were on the brink of something truly groundbreaking. Walking back to his quarters, Doc felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The challenges were daunting, but the rewards, breaking new ground in interstellar relations and personal growth, were immense. As he looked up at the Martian sky, now a familiar sight, he felt a deep connection to everything the outpost stood for, a bridge between the known and the unknown, a place where understanding began not with conquest, but with conversation and cooperation. Chapter 6. The Test of Will. The Martian dawn cast a pale light over the United Earth outpost as Dr. Jonathan, Doc Harlow, and Major Tom Erickson convened in the command center. Lieutenant Carl Anders joined them shortly, carrying a tablet filled with the latest communications from Earth. "Morning, gentlemen. We've got an update from HQ," Carl announced, his tone serious. "There's growing interest in the device and our interactions with the Virians. They're pushing for more aggressive testing." Doc frowned, his concern evident. "Aggressive how, exactly? We've been careful for a reason. The balance here is delicate." Tom leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "They're thinking about applications beyond diplomacy, potential military uses. It's not the direction we hoped to take." The three men sat in contemplative silence for a moment before Carl added, "There's also talk of sending additional personnel to oversee the expanded testing protocol." "We need to handle this carefully," Doc said, his voice steady. "Our first priority has to be maintaining the trust we've built with the Virians. Any hint that we're using this technology for power rather than peace could set us back significantly." Tom nodded. "I agree. Doc, you should lead the conversation with the Virians today. Explain our situation and reassure them of our intentions." Later that day, Doc met with Virex and the other Virian leaders in their designated conference room. The atmosphere was tense as Doc explained the new developments. "Virex, our mission here has always been one of peace and understanding," Doc began, choosing his words with care. "However, there are pressures from Earth that are pushing us towards other applications for the device. I want to assure you that our team here is committed to our original goals." Virex observed Doc quietly, its expression unreadable. After a moment it replied, "Your honesty is appreciated, Dr. Harlow. We too are under similar pressures from our own leaders. It seems our paths are aligned more closely than we thought." Doc nodded, relieved by Virex's response. "Perhaps this is an opportunity, Virex. An opportunity for us to demonstrate how cooperation can lead to better outcomes than competition or conflict." Virex tilted its head, considering. "We will need to discuss this further among ourselves. We value the trust we have built with your team and would prefer to continue on this path." Back at the command center, Doc relayed the conversation to Tom and Carl. "They're cautious but open. We might just be able to turn this into a joint stance against the pressure from our respective governments." "That's a delicate dance, Doc," Tom remarked. "But if anyone can lead it, you can." The following days were a flurry of preparation. Doc, Tom, and Carl worked closely together, drafting proposals and strategies to present a unified front. They held multiple sessions with the Virians, discussing potential safeguards and protocols to ensure the device's use remained ethical and mutually beneficial. As part of their strategy, they decided to co-author a detailed report outlining the scientific and diplomatic progress made so far, emphasizing the benefits of continued cooperation. The report also subtly highlighted the risks of repurposing the technology for other uses. "It's about setting the narrative," Carl said as they reviewed the final draft. "We're not just reacting to the pressures. We're actively shaping the discussion." The report was well received by both the human and Virian leaders, buying them some time and leeway. It was a testament to the power of a united front in diplomacy and the importance of shared goals. As the Martian sun set, casting long shadows over the outpost, the three men stood watching from the command center, a sense of cautious optimism among them. "We've managed to hold the line for now," Tom said quietly. "And we'll continue to do so," Doc added, "as long as we stay true to our mission and to each other." Their united front had not only preserved the delicate peace at the outpost, but had strengthened the bonds between them, setting a precedent for how humanity would handle such powerful technologies in the future. Chapter 7. Humanity's stand. As the Martian sky brightened with the approach of another day, Dr. Jonathan "Doc" Harlow, Major Tom Erickson, and Lieutenant Carl Anders gathered in the outpost strategy room, their expressions marked by a mix of determination and concern. "We've got a video conference with Earth Command in an hour," Tom stated, reviewing the agenda on his digital pad. "They'll want updates on the device and our discussions with the Virians." Doc nodded, adjusting his glasses. "We need to be clear and unified in our message. The benefits of our cooperative approach with the Virians far outweigh the short-term gains of repurposing the technology for other uses." Carl looked up from his notes. "I've compiled data on all our interactions and progress with the Virian technology. It's crucial we present this effectively to show the potential risks of misusing the technology." The trio spent the next hour preparing, rehearsing their parts, and refining their arguments. As the time for the call approached, they connected the secure line to Earth, the screen flickering to life to reveal the assembly of military and scientific leaders from the United Nations Interstellar Command. "Good morning," Doc began, his voice calm but firm. "We appreciate this opportunity to discuss our ongoing mission and the extraordinary partnership we've forged with the Virians." Tom took over seamlessly. "Our joint efforts have led to significant breakthroughs in understanding not only the Virian technology, but also their culture and philosophy. This understanding is vital for maintaining peace and advancing human interests in space." Carl presented the compiled data, highlighting key findings and testimonials from both human and Virian team members about the positive impacts of their collaborative work. The response from Earth was mixed, with several leaders expressing their concerns and pushing for more aggressive tactics. However, the clarity and conviction of Doc, Tom, and Carl's presentation gradually swayed the opinion in their favor. "Dr. Harlow, while we recognize the strategic value of the technology, your team's approach raises important ethical considerations," one of the senior commanders on Earth conceded. "Can you assure us that continuing down this path is the best course of action for humanity?" Doc leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Absolutely. Our mission here should not just be about advancing human technology, but about setting a precedent for how humanity interacts with other sentient beings. The trust and mutual respect we've built with the Virians are the foundations of a more stable and peaceful interstellar community." The meeting concluded with Earth Command reluctantly agreeing to continue supporting the current diplomatic approach, provided regular updates and stringent oversight continued. After the call, the trio sighed in collective relief. "We held the line, gentlemen," Tom said, a hint of pride in his voice. "And we'll need to keep holding it," Carl added, turning off the communication equipment. Doc looked out the window at the Martian landscape, contemplative. "This is more than just politics and power games. It's about what kind of species we want to be as we step out into the galaxy." In the days that followed, Doc and his team deepened their collaboration with the Virians, working on joint projects that benefited both their peoples. The outpost became a symbol of what could be achieved when different species worked together for a common good. One evening, as they observed a rare alignment of Mars moons from the observation deck, Doc shared a thought with Tom and Carl. "Every decision we've made, every challenge we've faced here, it's all been worth it. This outpost isn't just a collection of buildings on a foreign planet. It's a beacon for humanity's potential." Tom clapped Doc on the back, smiling broadly. "And to think, they thought they knew everything about human ranks until they met Doc." Carl laughed, joining in the camaraderie. "Here's to many more years of proving them wrong and doing it our way." As they watched the moons glide silently across the Martian sky, the men of the outpost stood together, not just as colleagues, but as pioneers of a new era of human and alien relations, driven by understanding, respect, and an unwavering commitment to a shared future. Chapter 8. Legacy of the Doc. The soft hum of the Martian outpost served as a backdrop to an unusually reflective evening. Dr. Jonathan "Doc" Harlow, Major Tom Erickson, and Lieutenant Carl Anders were gathered in the main observatory, looking out over the vast red landscape that had become their second home. "Can you believe it's been nearly 2 years?" Carl asked, his voice tinged with a mix of nostalgia and disbelief. Tom chuckled, his gaze fixed on the horizon where Earth would soon appear as a faint blue in the sky. "Time flies when you're making history, doesn't it?" Doc adjusted his glasses, his eyes not leaving the telescope through which he'd spent countless hours gazing into the cosmos. "We've accomplished a lot. But I keep thinking about what's next. Not just for us, but for the next teams, for the future interactions with the Virians and others." "The groundwork we've laid here is solid," Tom replied, turning to face his colleagues. "Thanks to your leadership, Document. You showed us all how powerful knowledge and mutual respect can be." Carl nodded in agreement, then turned to his console to pull up some data. "Speaking of groundwork, look at this." He displayed a series of graphs and charts. "Our latest reports from the collaborative projects. The data doesn't just show success. It shows a blueprint for future missions." Doc smiled, pleased yet humbled. "It's been a team effort, every step of the way. This," he gestured around them, "isn't just my legacy or ours. It's a new way for humanity to approach the universe, with curiosity, respect, and diplomacy." Tom's communicator beeped, a reminder of their scheduled meeting with Earth Command. Time to share our successes and plans for the next phase. As they prepared for the call, the men were joined by Dr. Henry Lau, who had become an integral part of their research team. Together, they connected with Earth, presenting their findings, the successful integration of human and Virian technologies, and the peaceful diplomatic channels that had been firmly established. Earth Command was visibly impressed. Dr. Harlow, Major Erickson, Lieutenant Anders, and Dr. Lau began the head of the command. "Your report is not only comprehensive, but shows a path forward for us all. We are particularly struck by the diplomatic model you've developed." The call ended with Earth Command's full endorsement of continuing the mission, along with plans to expand the outpost into a larger, more permanent research and diplomatic facility. After the call, the group gathered once more in the observatory. Doc looked around at his team, his heart full. "This outpost, this mission, it's taught me more than I ever expected. About aliens, about space, but mostly about people and what brings us together," Doc said, his voice soft yet clear. Carl turned from the telescope, where he had been watching a meteor shower paint streaks across the Martian sky. "What's one thing you'd tell the new team coming in, Doc?" Doc thought for a moment, then said, "Embrace the unknown with open arms and an open heart, and never underestimate the importance of a good conversation." Laughter filled the room, easing the bittersweet feeling of an era coming to an end and another beginning. They continued to watch the stars, each lost in their thoughts but united in their purpose. As the night progressed, their conversation drifted from professional to personal, each sharing dreams for the future, both on Mars and back on Earth. They discussed possible return dates, future missions, and the ongoing relationships with the Virians. The chapter of their lives that had unfolded on Mars was drawing to a close, but the legacy of their work, the approach that Doc had championed from the start, would resonate across future missions, influencing human-alien relations for generations. As they finally left the observatory, a sense of accomplishment filled the air, mingled with anticipation for what was yet to come. Mars, with its red sands and towering shadows, had not just been a challenge to overcome but a bridge to the wider universe, a bridge built on understanding, respect, and the silent command of a man called Doc.